host Rafa. Welcome back to JRE in a nutshell. This week we have 4 pretty interesting episodes, as usual, 4 very different topics. And at the end of this timestamp part, I will give you a tip on how to watch the Joe Rogan Experience more effectively and faster. So yeah, I'm really excited to start, and let's get right to it. So let's start with Adam Curry. This guy, he comes pretty often on the show, and it's mostly, always when he comes on, it's mostly about conspiracy theory. So this is pretty cool. I mentioned before that conspiracy theory is definitely my shit, and I'm pretty interested about it. Nothing was new from what they spoke about. This guy has a podcast called No Agenda, and you can find it online. So if you're interested on this guy, definitely check him out. But yeah, in this particular case, there was nothing very special, nothing new. They spoke about Bitcoin a whole lot in a positive way, so I was happy about that. They spoke about Twitter, about the Russian-Ukraine war, and about journalism and the mainstream media, about the Pentagon, about religion. So a little bit about everything, and see the CIA as well. Of course, they never missed that. And yeah, it was pretty entertaining, and I would give it 3.5 nuts. Because there are a couple of things I didn't know, but most of the information I knew already. So yeah, if you're interested in this subject, definitely check it out, and you won't regret it. So Mike Glover. Mike Glover, he used to be Black Ops military guy and tons of missions. He loved what he did, and now that he's retired, he created a channel and wrote a book about survival, about if shit hits the fan, what you should do, how to whatever, hold water, hold food, and tricks, and all that stuff about survival, basically. So in case of, let's say, another pandemic or a bigger pandemic, or in case of natural disasters, like they were talking about collisions from asteroids and zombie attacks and all this shit. In case any kind of shit hits the fan, Armageddon, apocalypse, whatever, this guy has a channel about that. And it's crazy that he's been suppressed and called a domestic terrorist. Even after working for 20 years for the government, now they're calling him a terrorist because he has a channel on survival things. And he teaches people how to shoot guns, how to hunt, how to, I don't know, use knives, and all of this practical stuff, like say Boy Scouts stuff even. And now they're calling him a domestic terrorist. So that's, I think, the reason why he was on the show, just to clear this up, and how, and for Joe to show the public how outrageous this is. And yes, it is outrageous, definitely. So ridiculous, so extreme, this narrative that they call a survivalist a domestic terrorist. So yeah, the episode is pretty interesting. I like these survival things, and I have a couple of books on survival, and I think it's pretty cool. So I found it interesting, some cool tricks, and on top of all the information on why he's being suppressed and all of this suppressed information as well. It's pretty cool and interesting and fucked up, to be honest. So yeah, I would give it 4 nuts. And this guy, he doesn't deserve anything that they've been calling him, and he deserves our support. So go check him out. So now let's talk about Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson has a similar situation than Mike Glover. He's way more famous. He's one of the most famous psychologists in the world. I guess most of you guys and girls have heard about him. He's very famous and very controversial, obviously. I mean, the controversy made him famous. So this guy is in the legal ministry, or whatever you want to call it, in Canada, has threatened with taking his license away if he doesn't do some training, some social media training or whatever. And well, that's obviously also outrageous. Losing his psychology license because he has different political views than the narrative is also outrageous, and one of the reasons why Joe has had him on again. Anyway, the whole conversation is pretty interesting. If you like psychology, he speaks mostly about, of course, as usual, the society and the psychology of the society, and of how the new generation growing up, teenagers, and all this gender situation, and all of this he normally covers. And he did it again in the new way with updates and very interesting stuff, very cool stuff, I think. I would give this episode 4.5 nuts, definitely. Super interesting, super crazy what's happening to him legally, and he has pretty cool, interesting things to say. I recommend for everybody in the West to take a listen, and it's very, very important. So, and now Merlin Tuttle. This episode is about bats.
Ah, the bat, ambassador of darkness, flitting out of his cave like a winged messenger, sightless spectre of the macabre.
But before I talk about the episode itself, let me say that this guy Merlin, he's the fucking man. Like, this motherfucker, he's so badass that he interrupted the interview so he could take a pill because he has Parkinson's. And he's still traveling the world and doing research and creating awareness on bats and how important they are for the ecosystem and all that good shit that he's trying to do for the planet as well. So thank you, Merlin, you rock. Appreciate that, dude, at this age that you're still kicking ass. And about the episode itself, well, when I read the description that this guy was a bat expert, I would have normally skipped this episode. Was not really that interested, but it's already kind of a recurring event that I think I'm not interested in about an episode, and it turned out to be awesome. Same with the bees about a month ago. So it's an awesome episode, really, really interesting information about bats and about the perception that society has on bats and the reality on it. It turns out they're pretty cute and they're pretty interesting and super important for us. And they pollinate and we need them. We need them badly. They talk about bat houses and how can we help. So bat houses are actually really cheap. I looked on Amazon. So I encourage everybody to just install a small bat house if you have the possibility. The episode is pretty short, 2 hours, and also about halfway through, a little bit after halfway through, they speak also about the adventures that he had to go through to get to research on bats. And a lot of those stories happen in the Amazon, in Venezuela, where I originally come from. So I found that, of course, super interesting. None of us really learned much in school about what's going on in the Amazon and the Amazon tribes, and this guy was deep in there, and it was basically, I learned a lot of new things about my own country and about the Amazon tribes that live there. Extremely, extremely interesting for me. And of course, that's the bias reason why I did the timestamp on this episode, because it was super, super cool for me. And I think the information about the bats is as well cool. So yeah, I give this episode 4 nuts. Definitely worth it. As I said, short, so as well not very time consuming. And I hope you enjoy it. So now let's go with the timestamp with the episode with Merlin Tuttle, the bat expert. So he obviously has books and stuff. It's all in the description. The website is all in the description. So they start with introductions as usual for a couple of minutes. Then they move obviously straight to bats and why people fear bats, and bats, local bats that they have in Austin over there where Joe lives and where the interview is done obviously, and bat houses and how to make people more bat friendly. And the bat houses, as I said on my opinion chapter before, they are super cheap, and I thought, yeah, it's a cool thing if it helps the environment and if they're actually nice animals and everything, the perspectives are wrong, then why not? Then they move then to types of bats. They talk about the Brazilian free-tail bat, which is the most common in the world, that they can fly super quick. And then they talk about the wings. Why can they fly better than birds or other flying creatures? And then they talk about the flying foxes, which is the biggest bat in the world. Huge one. They show pictures. It's crazy. By the way, if you're going to watch this episode, I recommend that you watch it, not only listen. They show a lot of images and videos that are really cool. Then they speak a little bit about Wuhan. So they move to eating bats. So they start with Wuhan, about the COVID situation, obviously. But just for a minute, then they talk more about eating bats and saving bats and why is the bat worth saving versus other animals, we can say. He doesn't say it like that, but kind of. And then eating bats, and he 1 hour 35, I think, 35 minutes, he stops to take a pill, a Parkinson's pill. Then they keep talking about eating bats, and then they talk about bats predators, so other animals that eat bats, like snakes and raccoons and stuff. And after that, they go to what bats eat. So they talk about all the nuts and flowers and stuff, and they talk about the pollination that they do. They also speak about how flora has evolved just to have some of the flowers have evolved so only bats can access to the food. It's crazy interesting. I mean, I thought it was surprising. Then they go to vampire bats, which are all in South America, and of course a little bit about this Dracula situation and all, all that stuff. Then at 1 hour 17, he presents, he has a present that he brought, and it's an arrowhead from the Yanomami tribe in the Amazon in Venezuelan territory. And so they go to adventures where that he had to go through to do this research on bats, and a lot of those adventures happen in the Amazon jungle. So he speaks about getting captured by Indians and river vandals and other tribes that he visited before, besides the Yanomami, and he speaks about the Indians taking psychedelics. Of course, Joe was very interested in that and asked further on that. And then for about 5 minutes, they show a little piece where he was on Letterman. So they show the interview on Letterman, I don't know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. He looked really young. And he speaks about also a donation that he's requiring from his listeners. He said that he was thinking that if every listener gives a couple dollars, then he could do his next project, which is an organization. So yeah, a couple dollars I can afford, so I went and gave a couple dollars. I encourage you to do the same. I'm putting the link is on the website, and I'm putting the website in the description, of course. So a couple dollars doesn't hurt any of us in the West, we can say. And they end with showing videos of these Yanomami Indians being high on the psychedelic, and they speak about the psychedelic and the chemical compounds that the psychedelic has. If you're into psychedelics, you're gonna find some similarities, and it is basically DMT. So I had no idea that in my country the Indians were snorting. They don't inhale. They were snorting DMT. That's really interesting information for me, new information that I didn't know. So that's the episode. I hope you found it interesting. I thought it was surprisingly interesting. And yeah, thanks for listening. And now at the beginning of the episode, I promise you a tip to watch the Joe Rogan Experience more effectively. And I think it's obvious that tip has to do with managing the speed in which you watch it. So I watch normally every episode at 1.2, saving about 20%. That's what I would assume, 20% of the time. So if it's a 3-hour episode, you can save up to 36 minutes. So almost 40 minutes saving every 3 hours. That's pretty efficient. And depends on each episode. Some people speak slower than others. So for example, the Merlin Tuttle episode, you can watch, or I could watch at 1.8x and still understand and get everything. The most important thing, of course, is that you're understanding, that it's not too fast, and that you're captivating the information. Otherwise, you're just losing time if you don't get anything. So you can make this test yourself. Maybe what is normal for me is too fast or too slow for you. Maybe when I say 1.8, then for you that means 1.5 or 2x. Who knows? Everybody's different. But from now on, if you make this test, you can say, oh, in the future, when Rafa says 1.8, for me, that means 1.5 or 2. Or maybe 1.2 is even too fast for you, and then you would rather watch at 1x, the normal speed. Everybody's different, but in any case, I would recommend that you use this tip because it saves you a lot of time, and since the interviews are so long, it could make you save a hell lot of a lot of time. So if you knew about this already, I apologize for wasting your time and having to come all the way here to know it. And if you didn't know it, then you're welcome. I hope it makes your watching experience more effectively. And that is a wrap for another JRE in a Nutshell show. Thank you so much for listening to my channel, to my episode. As usual, please talk about me, tell to your friends, share on Instagram, on Twitter, on whatever you use. Please comment if you have suggestions, questions, requests, whatever you have. Hit me a comment, follow me, subscribe as well, and push the little bell so you can get my weekly episodes. And thank you for listening. Peace.